Today, we have a million rules to protect kids when they get into trouble. It makes sense, right? They're just kids. Their brains are still developing and they don't fully get consequences yet. So, we have special systems designed to protect them from the legal system. But what if I told you there was a time when all of that went out the window? A time when a kid's whisper, a misunderstood prayer, a playground rumor could get their entire family condemned. What happened when a child could be dragged into the torture chambers of one of the most terrifying organizations in history and treated not like a kid, but like an enemy? This is the story of Diego Lopez. His name is a stand-in because the real names have been forgotten. But his story represents the unbelievable reality for thousands of children who face the horrors of the Spanish Inquisition. This is a story of innocence destroyed by pure, organized terror. To understand how insane this got, we have to rewind to Spain in 1492. The country was just unified, and the king and queen wanted everyone to be Catholic, no exceptions. They wanted one nation, under one single faith. This mission had one clear target: heretics. And in their eyes, the biggest suspects were the conversos, families who had converted from Judaism or Islam. It didn't matter if your family had converted generations ago. You were always under suspicion, and they were always watching to see if you were a real Catholic. This is the world Diego was born into. He's a converso kid. To everyone else, his family looks perfectly Catholic. They go to Mass, celebrate the holidays, and say their prayers. Diego is learning all the same things as the other kids. He's just a normal kid, playing in the streets with no idea about any of this. But behind closed doors, things were different. There were whispers, old habits. Maybe his grandmother lit candles on a Friday night and never said why. Maybe his dad refused to eat pork, saying he had a bad stomach. Maybe a word from an old language slipped out. To us, that's nothing. But to the Inquisition, that was proof you were secretly practicing Judaism. And that was a crime punishable by the most extreme methods imaginable. For a kid like Diego, this double life was so confusing. He had to act one way in public and a totally different way at home. He was a Spanish Catholic kid carrying a secret he didn't even get. His entire life was a tightrope, and one slip meant his family was completely destroyed. A family's destruction back then didn't start with an explosion. It started with a whisper. A jealous neighbor, someone you competed with in business, a fired servant. Literally anyone could accuse you, and they could stay anonymous. All it took was one person ratting you out to the Holy Office. For Diego's family, the cause could have been anything. Maybe Diego told a friend his family rests on Saturdays, the Jewish Sabbath. Maybe he said no to a piece of sausage at a party. Or maybe a priest quizzed him, and he answered a tricky question wrong. The Inquisition had spies and informants everywhere, and they were always listening. And get this, they took a charge against a child just as seriously as one against an adult. In the Inquisition's crazy logic, heresy had no age limit. The official rules said a 14-year-old boy was fully responsible, but they would investigate kids as young as Saix. Kids went through the exact same process as their parents. Then, one day, it happens. The familiares, the Inquisition's secret police, show up at the door. They aren't soldiers, but they are more terrifying than an army. They have the full power of the church and the king. You can't argue. You can't plead. An accusation was made. You had to go. Imagine being 10-year-old Diego. The entire street goes silent. A knock on the door. Your parents' faces go white. Someone grabs you, not gently, but with the cold grip of an official. The last thing you hear is your mother's screams as they drag you away into the darkness. They take you to the Inquisition's prison. These weren't normal jails. They were fortresses built for total isolation to mess with your head. The cells were dark, cold, and completely silent. He's all alone. The point of this was simple. Break the prisoner's mind before they even ask the first question. For a kid, ripped away from his family and everything he knows, the pressure itself was a form of torture. When Diego is finally brought before the Inquisitors, he's terrified, confused, and desperate. The room is designed to intimidate you. He's standing in front of a panel of men, the Inquisitors, who see themselves as doctors for the soul, and a scribe whose only job is to write down every word, every stutter, every single sob. Here's the most insane part. They don't tell him what he's accused of or who accused him. That's how it worked. You had to guess what you did wrong, confess your own sins, and, most importantly, name everyone who did it with you. The questions start. They're confusing and go in circles, designed to trap him. Do you know why you are here? Have you left the path of the church? Who taught you these heresies? They ask about his parents, grandparents, friends. They twist his kid answers into confessions. He says he doesn't eat pork. Boom, proof he's a secret Jew. He remembers his grandma's candles. Boom, evidence of a secret ritual. Diego denies everything. He cries. He begs. He swears he's a good Catholic. But to the inquisitors, refusing to confess isn't a sign of innocence. It's proof he's a stubborn heretic. His soul is sick, and if he won't take the cure, they have other ways to convince him. The inquisitors announce his guilt is half-proven, which was the legal excuse they needed to go to the next stage, torture. They argued torture wasn't a punishment. It was a tool for purification, a way to get a confession to save the prisoner's soul. A doctor was usually there, not to stop the pain, but to make sure the prisoner didn't die before confessing. It's unbelievable. Diego is taken to another room, deeper in the prison. This one was built underground so no one could hear the screams. He sees the tools, the potro, or the rack, that would stretch your body until your joints popped. The garucha, a pulley that yanks you into the air by your hands tied behind your back, then drops you, ripping your arms out of their sockets. And the tocha, the water torture, where they force a cloth down your throat and pour water over it so you feel like you're drowning. He's only 10, but the inquisitors made their choice. Diego, a child, is stripped naked and strapped to one of these devices. They stand over him, telling him to confess and name the other heretics. He's crying for his mom and dad. He keeps saying he knows nothing. Then they start. The pain is absolute. His joints are screaming. His muscles are tearing. Between each wave of pain, they ask the questions again. The scribe just calmly writes everything down. In that much agony, truth and lies don't matter anymore. The only thing that matters is making it stop. And so, he confesses. He tells them whatever they want to hear. He says he is a Jew. He says his parents taught him to hate Christ. Then comes the final, soul-crushing demand. He must name others. Broken and terrified, he names his own family, his mother, his father, his grandmother. He gives them the names they want, the confession they need, and in that moment, he damns the people he loves most. His will isn't his anymore. It belongs to the Inquisition. A confession they got from torture had to be repeated later, freely, outside the chamber. Facing the threat of going back in that room, almost everyone did. With Diego's confession locked in, his family's fate was sealed. The final act was the auto da fe, or act of faith. This was a massive public event, like a twisted religious festival, designed to show everyone the power of the church. The whole town would gather. Prisoners were marched through the streets wearing a special garment called a San Benito. The design on it told the crowd your crime and your sentence. If you confessed, it was a plain yellow tunic. If you were an unrepentant heretic sentenced to die, it was painted with demons and hellfire. Diego, small and broken, is in this parade. He sees his parents, their faces filled with a grief and terror that he feels too. He understands, maybe for the first time, the true weight of what he did. He confessed to stop the pain, but he condemned them all. Their sentences are read out loud. Because Diego confessed, he is reconciled. His punishment might be getting whipped or being locked away in a monastery for years. But for his parents accused by their own son, there is zero mercy. They are to be relaxed to the secular arm, a crazy euphemism for being handed over to the government to be burned at the stake. The church claimed it couldn't shed blood, so this was their workaround. Diego is forced to watch. He watches as the people who raised him are tied to posts. He hears the crowd jeering and the final prayers. He sees the torch being lit. This is the Inquisition's final lesson, the price of heresy and the cost of a confession. His life is spared, but it's over. He's an orphan. His family's property is seized by the government. The name Lopez is now poison. He will carry that shame and trauma for the rest of his life. He is a survivor, but he is also a ghost, haunted by the memory of the chamber and the sight of the flames. The story of Diego Lopez is a fabrication, but the history it represents is horrifyingly real. While it's true that the Inquisition's use of torture was sometimes more regulated than in other courts, that's an insane defense that offers no comfort. The cold, organized nature of the cruelty that made it even more terrifying. The experiences of real children prove that kids were not safe. There are real cases of kids as young as 6 being investigated for heresy. Age gave you no protection. The Spanish Inquisition lasted for over 350 years. In that time, it prosecuted an estimated 150,000 people and led to thousands of executions. It was a reign of terror built on suspicion, where what you believed was policed and doubt was a death sentence. The story of Diego reminds us that the victims of these things are never just numbers. They are individuals, families, and children whose worlds were torn apart in the name of God. It's a brutal reminder of what happens when fanaticism takes over, and why we can never forget the stories of those who were silenced. If this look into one of history's darkest corners was compelling to you, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more stories that uncover the past. Let us know in the comments, what other historical events do you think need to have their hidden stories told? Thanks for watching.